I'm Joshua. I'm 25 years old. And the day I finally escaped the suffocating grip of my family was supposed to be the proudest day of my life. Instead, it became a crime scene. Before I tell you how a single piece of paper destroyed my family and how I ended up owning the car my father used to humiliate me, please take a second to like this video and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading about where you guys are in the world. Let me take you back to that morning. The sun was beating down on the university quad like a hammer. It had to be 90 degrees in the shade, and the humidity was so thick you could practically chew it. Wearing a black polyester graduation gown felt like being wrapped in a garbage bag inside a sauna. Sweat was trickling down my spine, soaking my dress shirt. It was the only nice shirt I owned. A white button-down I'd bought from a Goodwill specifically for this day because I couldn't afford a new one. Around me, the energy was electric. Thousands of families were cheering. Air horns were blasting every few seconds, cutting through the low murmur of conversation. People were crying happy tears, hugging their kids, taking selfies with peace signs and bouquets of flowers. It was a sea of joy, a celebration of 4 years of hard work. But I sat there stone-faced, my stomach churning with acid. I gripped the plastic armrests of my folding chair until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't looking at the stage. I wasn't listening to the valedictorian talk about future leaders or unlimited potential. I was scanning the crowd, searching for them. My parents, Robert and Sarah. I had texted them the time 3 weeks ago. I reminded them yesterday. I sent a pin drop of the location this morning at 6 a.m. My dad had texted back a single thumbs-up emoji. That was it. No, proud of you. No, can't wait. Just a thumb. As the names started being called, Anderson, Abbott, Adams, I still couldn't see them. You okay, man? I jumped a little. It was Liam, the guy sitting next to me. We'd shared a few architecture studios together. He was adjusting his cap, grinning. You look like you're about to throw up. I'm fine, I lied, forcing a smile that felt tight on my face. Just looking for my folks. Traffic, probably. Yeah, parking is a nightmare. Liam nodded, pointing toward the bleachers. My mom's over there waving a giant cutout of my head. It's embarrassing, but, it's love. I looked where he pointed. A woman in a floral dress was jumping up and down, screaming his name. It made a lump form in my throat. That's what it was supposed to look like. That's what normal looked like. I turned back to the empty aisle where my parents were supposed to be. The heat seemed to intensify. I closed my eyes for a second, and the noise of the crowd faded into the background. My mind drifted back, not to the lectures or the studio nights, but to the grind. The last 4 years hadn't been a college experience. They had been a survival mission. I remembered the smell of the dishwater at the diner where I worked the closing shift from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. My hands were always chapped, smelling like bleach and old grease. I remembered the ache in my lower back from my second job at the warehouse, lifting 50-pound boxes of auto parts on weekends just to make rent. I remembered the phone call I made to my dad during my sophomore year. My laptop, a clunky thing I'd bought used, had finally died. I needed it for my CAD software. I couldn't do my architecture assignments without it. Dad, I had said, swallowing my pride. I need help. It's $300 for a refurbished one. I'll pay you back when I get my summer bonus. I remembered his laugh. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was dry like sandpaper. 300? Joshua, do you think money grows on trees? We just bought Caleb a new set of golf clubs. He's showing real potential. You need to figure it out. That's what the real world is. Sink or swim. Sink or swim. That was the family motto. Except they were on a yacht, and I was treading water with weights tied to my ankles. I ended up selling plasma twice a week and skipping lunch for a month to buy that laptop. I lost 10 pounds that semester. When I came home for Christmas, thin and exhausted, my mom, Sarah, just pinched my cheek and said, "At least you're staying trim. No one likes a fat architect." Miller Joshua. The voice on the loudspeaker snapped me back to reality. I blinked. I was standing up. My legs moved on autopilot. I walked toward the stage, the black gown swooshing around my ankles. The applause was polite. The generic applause you give to a stranger. I looked out into the blinding sun, shielding my eyes. The VIP section, the bleachers, the standing room. I scanned them all in seconds. Nothing. No Robert. No Sarah. No Caleb. My heart hammered against my ribs. They didn't come. After everything, after I graduated summa cum laude, after I did it all without asking them for a dime in tuition, they didn't even show up. I walked across the stage. Dean Andrew was standing there, holding the diploma cover. He was a tall man, imposing but kind, with silver hair and a beard that made him look like a scholar from another century. He had been a friend of my grandfather, Isaiah. I reached out to shake his hand, expecting the quick, congratulations, keep moving routine. Instead, Dean Andrew stopped. He held onto my hand firmly. He didn't let go. He leaned in, ignoring the line of students waiting behind me. "Your grandfather would have been incredibly proud today, Joshua," he said, his voice low but clear over the cheering crowd. I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you, sir." He didn't pull back. He looked me right in the eye, his expression shifting from ceremonial to serious. "I see them, Joshua. They just pulled into the loading zone. Don't let them break you today. You hear me? The wind is about to change." I frowned, confused. "What? Go," he whispered, finally releasing my hand. "Stand tall." I walked off the stage, clutching the empty leather folder that represented 4 years of hell. I didn't understand what he meant, but as I descended the stairs back to the grass, I saw a commotion near the back entrance of the field. A bright flash of red, a roar of an engine that didn't belong near a pedestrian zone. My stomach dropped. I knew that engine note. I knew exactly who it was. The wind wasn't changing. A storm was making landfall. The ceremony ended 20 minutes later. While other graduates were tossing their caps in the air and finding their parents for hugs and photos, I stood near the edge of the parking lot, waiting. And then I saw it. Parked illegally across 2 handicap spots right near the entrance was a brand new Porsche 911 GT3. Bright, aggressive red. It gleamed in the sun, looking like a jewel dropped in a sandbox. Next to it was my dad's massive luxury SUV. A black tank of a car that cost more than my entire college tuition. People were staring. Some were taking pictures of the car. I just felt the familiar heat of shame creeping up my neck. The doors opened. My father, Robert, stepped out first. He looked like he was dressed for a yacht party in the Hamptons. Beige linen suit, open collar, loafers with no socks, and gold aviator sunglasses. He checked his watch immediately, looking annoyed. Then my mother, Sarah. She was wearing a white dress that was a little too short and a little too tight for a graduation, clearly designed to scream, "Look at me, I haven't aged." She was holding a designer purse in the crook of her arm like a shield. Finally, from the back of the SUV, my younger brother Caleb tumbled out. He was 21, the golden child. He was wearing a graphic tee, ripped jeans that cost $400, and he was vaping. Trailing behind him was his best friend, Hunter, holding a heavy-duty camera on a gimbal stabilizer. "What's up, guys?" Hunter was yelling at the camera, ignoring the solemnity of the event. "We are here at the graduation, about to surprise Caleb's brother. Smash that like button." They looked like a circus, a wealthy, tasteless circus. I took a deep breath, straightened my cheap tie, and walked over. "Hey," I said, "you guys made it." Robert didn't smile. He didn't offer a hand. He didn't say congratulations. He took off his sunglasses, wiped a smudge of sweat from his forehead, and glared at me. "You made it barely," Robert grunted. He reached into his pocket and tossed a set of keys at me. They hit my chest and fell into the grass. Parking was a nightmare. I had to park the SUV 3 blocks away and shuttle everyone here in the Porsche. "Pick those up. Don't let anyone scratch the paint." I stared at the keys in the grass. "Hello to you too, Dad." Sarah walked up, looking me up and down with a critical squint. She reached out, not to hug me, but to flick a piece of lint off my gown. Joshua, look at you. That gown is so baggy. Did you get the wrong size? You look like you're wearing a tent. It's unflattering. It's a standard size, Mom, I said, my voice flat. It's what everyone is wearing. Well, everyone looks cheap then, she sighed, fanning herself with a program she'd picked up off the ground. God, it's hot. Why didn't you become a doctor? Medical schools have air conditioning for their graduations. Caleb blew a cloud of strawberry-scented vapor in my direction. Yo, Josh, nice hat. You look like a wizard from a low-budget movie. Hunter laughed, shoving the camera lens right into my face. Reaction shot. The brother is not amused. Tell us, Josh, how does it feel to be unemployed? I'm not unemployed, I said, pushing the camera away gently. I have a junior architect position starting Monday. I told you guys this. Junior architect, Robert scoffed. He leaned against the red Porsche, crossing his arms. What does that pay? 50 grand? 60? That won't even cover the insurance on this car. He patted the roof of the Porsche affectionately. Just picked it up last week. GT3. 500 horsepower. Now this is an achievement. This is what success looks like, Joshua. Not a piece of paper. I looked at the car. It was beautiful undeniably. But seeing it there, knowing they claimed they were tight on cash, whenever I asked for help with textbooks or rent, made my blood boil. It's a nice car, Dad, I said quietly. I'm glad you could afford it. Afford it? Robert laughed. I earned it. That's the difference between us, son. I understand the value of $1. I understand investment. You understand drawing pretty pictures. I design buildings, Dad. Structural integrity. Safety. It's not just pictures. Whatever, Sarah interrupted, checking her makeup in the side mirror of the Porsche. Can we hurry this up? We have a reservation at Lou Bernardine in the city at 7. We can't be late. Are we going to dinner? I asked, a flicker of hope igniting. Maybe this was the plan. A nice dinner to celebrate. Sarah laughed, a high, tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. We? Oh, honey, no. It's for your father's business partners. It's very exclusive. No plus ones. Besides, you have to pack, don't you? Your lease ends tomorrow. The reality hit me like a punch to the gut. They hadn't come to celebrate. They had come to show off the car, take a few photos for Facebook to pretend they were good parents, and leave. Right? I said. My lease. Speaking of leases and finances, Robert said, his tone shifting. He stood up straight, buttoning his linen jacket. His face went hard, losing the mocking edge and becoming entirely transactional. We have a graduation present for you. You do? I asked. Couldn't help it. The child in me still wanted their approval. Still wanted a gift. Hunter, get this, Robert commanded. Hunter moved the camera into position, crouching low for a dramatic angle. Robert reached into the inner pocket of his jacket and pulled out a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was heavy. It was sealed with red wax, stamped with the family initial M. It looked official. It looked important. Here, Robert said, thrusting it into my hand. I took it. My hands were trembling slightly. Was it a check? A down payment on an apartment? Maybe a savings bond from Grandpa Isaiah that had finally matured? Go on, Caleb snickered, leaning against the car hood. Open it. It's life-changing, bro. I broke the wax seal. I pulled out the papers. There were several sheets stapled together. It wasn't a check. The top of the page read, in bold, black letters, Invoice for services rendered. Below that, Client, Joshua Miller. I blinked, sweat dripping into my eyes. I couldn't process what I was seeing. I looked at the line items. 1998, diaper service and formula, $2,500, $2,000, pediatric medical copay, $400, 2005 to 2015, room and board, 10 by 10 bedroom, $600 per month x 120 months, equals $72,000, 2010, orthodontics. Braces $5,000 2016 to 2020. Parenting convenience fee, $15,000 emotional labor surcharge, $25,000. I flipped to the last page. The numbers swam before my eyes. Grand total due, $199,100. I looked up at my father. He wasn't smiling. He was deadly serious. What is this? I stammered. It's the bill, Robert said calmly. For raising you. The sounds of the parking lot seemed to vanish. No more cheering, no more cars honking. Just the rustle of the paper in my shaking hands and the wet, heavy heat of the air. A bill, I whispered. For raising me? You can't charge a child for existing. Sarah stepped forward, her face composed, her eyes cold as ice. She put a hand on my shoulder, but there was no warmth in it. Felt like a claw. Joshua, listen to me, she began, using that tone she always used when she was gaslighting me. Soothing, reasonable, condescending. Smart people treat a family like a business. It's an organization, an investment. We invested in you. We put food in your mouth, clothes on your back, a roof over your head. We sacrificed our liquidity for your development. I worked, I argued, my voice rising. I bought my own clothes since I was 16. I paid for my own car. I paid my own tuition. I didn't ask you for anything in college. And what about before college? Robert cut in, his voice booming. Those first 18 years weren't free, boy. Do you know what the ROI, return on investment, is on a child these days? Usually 0. We are correcting that. Roy, I stared at him. I'm your son. Not a stock portfolio. It's time for the return, Robert continued, ignoring my outrage. He tapped the paper in my hand. Look at the terms on the last page. We're being generous. We're not asking for a lump sum today. We know you don't have 200 grand. I looked down at the text at the bottom. Payment plan. Debtor, Joshua Miller, agrees to remit 40% of gross monthly income for a period of 15 years, plus an annual interest rate of 8%. 40%? I choked out. Dad, 40% of my paycheck? I won't be able to pay rent. I won't be able to eat. That's illegal. You can't do this. We can and we will, Robert hissed, leaning in close so only I could hear. You think you're so independent? You think you're better than us because you went to this fancy school and got your little degree? You're nothing without us. You're a leech. I'm not signing this, I said, crumbling the paper in my fist. This is insane. If you don't sign that acknowledgement of debt today, Robert said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl, then you are no longer part of this family. We disown you. You lose everything. The connections, the name, the inheritance, everything. What inheritance? I shot back. You guys claim you're broke whenever I need help, but you buy a Porsche? What is there to inherit? Sign it, Caleb yelled, laughing. Just pay the toll. Bro, don't be a deadbeat. Hunter was circling us, getting every angle. This is gold, he muttered. Viral gold. Give me the pen, Sarah said, reaching into her purse. She pulled out a gold fountain pen. Sign it, Joshua. Don't make a scene. It's the least you can do after all the pain you caused me during childbirth. Do you know I had to have a C-section? That scar cost me a modeling contract. That was 25 years ago. I screamed. Couldn't hold it back anymore. I'm not paying you for being born. Then give me that, Sarah snapped. Before I could react, she lunged forward. She didn't grab the invoice. She grabbed the leather diploma cover I was holding in my other hand. Hey, I yelled, tightening my grip. It's collateral, she shrieked, her mask of sophistication slipping. She yanked hard. If you won't sign the debt, I'm taking the degree. We paid for the food that fueled the brain that got this degree, so technically, we own a percentage of it. Let go. I pulled back. We were wrestling over my diploma in the middle of the parking lot. People were stopping. Graduates were staring. A security guard started walking over. Mom, stop. You're going to rip it. Sign the paper, Robert roared. Sign it or you're dead to us. I'd rather be dead to you than be your slave, I shouted, shoving my mother back. She stumbled, not falling, but stepping back in her heels. She gasped dramatically, clutching her chest as if I'd shot her. Assault, Caleb yelled, pointing a finger at me. He hit Mom. Hunter, did you get that? He hit Mom. I got it, Hunter confirmed, grinning like a shark. You ungrateful little bastard. Robert stepped forward, raising his hand as if to strike me. I flinched, bracing for the impact. I was 25, but in front of him, I felt like I was 10 years old again, terrified of his temper. Robert Miller. The voice cracked through the air like a whip. It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that froze everyone in place. My father stopped, his hand mid-air. We all turned. Walking toward us across the grass wasn't a security guard. It was Dean Andrew, and he wasn't alone. Walking beside him was a man in a sharp, charcoal gray suit, carrying a leather briefcase. He had steel gray hair and eyes that looked like they could cut glass. I recognized him instantly, though I hadn't seen him in years. It was Mr. Thomas, my grandfather Isaiah's personal lawyer and the executor of his estate. The crowd that had gathered around us parted silently to let them through. Dean Andrew, Robert said, lowering his hand slowly, putting on his fake smile again. So sorry about this. Just a little family dispute. Emotions running high, you know how it is. We were just leaving. I don't think you're going anywhere just yet, Robert, Dean Andrew said. He didn't smile. He stepped between me and my father, creating a physical barrier. And this doesn't look like a dispute. It looks like extortion. Extortion? Sarah laughed nervously, smoothing her dress. Don't be ridiculous. We're just discussing family finances. Mr. Thomas stepped forward. He placed his briefcase on the hood of the red Porsche. The sound of the metal clasp snapping open echoed in the silence. Hello, Sarah. Hello, Robert, Mr. Thomas said. His voice was calm, terrifyingly calm. It's been a while. Since the funeral, I believe. Thomas? Robert nodded, sweat beading on his forehead. What are you doing here? You represent the university now. No, Thomas said, pulling a thick file out of his bag. I represent the estate of Isaiah Miller. And by extension, I represent the beneficiary of that estate. He turned and looked at me. His eyes softened. Hello, Joshua. Hi, Mr. Thomas. I whispered. Estate, Sarah said sharply. The estate is closed. We managed the assets. It's done. Is it? Thomas opened the file. Because according to the terms of the trust fund established by Isaiah Miller in 1999, there was a specific educational and living trust set up for Joshua Miller, a sum of $500,000, to be accessed upon his 18th birthday for tuition, housing, and expenses. I gasped. 500,000? I looked at my parents. They were pale, ghostly pale. I never saw that money, I said, my voice shaking. They told me Grandpa died broke. They told me there was nothing. Of course there was nothing, Robert shouted, his voice cracking. The market crashed. Bad investments. It's gone. We tried to save it, but it's gone. Mr. Thomas pulled a pair of reading glasses from his pocket and slid them onto his nose. He picked up a document. Where is the $500,000, Anthony? Thomas asked. He looked up over the rim of his glasses. And before you answer, remember that perjury is a felony. And so is embezzlement. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Even the air horns in the distance seemed to stop. A circle of onlookers had formed, students, parents, professors. Hunter was still filming, but his grin had vanished, replaced by confusion. He sensed the shift in power, but he didn't understand it yet. Embezzlement, Robert sputtered. He tried to laugh, but it came out as a dry cough. You've got to be kidding me. I was the trustee. I had discretion to manage the funds as I saw fit for the benefit of the family. For the benefit of the beneficiary, Thomas corrected him, his voice slicing through Robert's bluster. Not the family, the beneficiary. Joshua. Sarah stepped in, linking her arm through Robert's, trying to present a united front. We used that money to keep a roof over Joshua's head, to feed him. That's what the money was for. Living expenses. Is that so? Thomas pulled a sheet of paper from the file. Because I have the bank records here. I've been subpoenaing them for months. You had no right, Robert snarled. I have every right. I am the executor, Thomas said calmly. Let's look at some of these living expenses for Joshua, shall we? He held up a document. August 2021. Withdrawal of $48,000. Memo. Tuition. See, Sarah cried out triumphantly. Tuition. We paid for his school. I stepped forward. No, you didn't. I paid my tuition. I took out student loans. I have the loan documents in my car right now. I owe $40,000 to the federal government. Thomas nodded at me. Correct. I checked with the bursar's office. The university never received a cent from the Miller Trust. He turned back to my parents. So where did that $48,000 go? Here it is. A wire transfer to Elite European Excursions. A 2-week luxury cruise through the Mediterranean for two. Robert and Sarah Miller. The crowd murmured. I felt sick. That was the summer I worked double shifts at the warehouse. I remembered seeing their photos on Facebook. Sarah holding a glass of wine on a balcony in Santorini, captioning it #blessed #hard work pays off. That was a business trip. Robert lied, his face turning red. Networking. Thomas ignored him and pulled out another sheet. January 2022. Withdrawal of $52,000. Memo. Housing costs. Rent. Sarah insisted. We have a mortgage. Joshua wasn't living with you in 2022, Thomas said coldly. He was living in a dorm, which he paid for. This $52,000 went to Prestige Landscaping, specifically for the installation of a heated saltwater pool and a new patio at your residence. I remembered that pool. I was never allowed to swim in it because Sarah didn't want me tracking dirt into the house. And let's not forget, Thomas continued, his voice getting harder, the $80,000 withdrawn last year, labeled Study Abroad Program. I never studied abroad, I said, my fists clenching at my sides. I wanted to go to Italy for an architecture program, but you said we couldn't afford it. Exactly, Thomas said. That $80,000 went to a settlement payment. A settlement for a NDA involving a Mr. Caleb Miller. We all turned to look at Caleb. He dropped his vape pen. His face went gray. What? Caleb squeaked. Caleb. Dean Andrews spoke up for the first time since the confrontation began. Or should I say, former student Caleb. You know, Caleb stammered. Know what? I asked, looking between them. Caleb is a junior at State. He's on the dean's list. Caleb was expelled 2 years ago, Joshua, Dean Andrews said, his voice filled with disappointment, for academic dishonesty, buying term papers, and for gambling debts incurred on campus grounds. That $80,000 was used to pay off some very dangerous people so they wouldn't break your brother's legs. I stared at my brother, the golden child, the one who mocked my thrift store clothes. He hadn't been in school for 2 years? You lied to me, I whispered. I looked at my parents. You told me he was excelling. You told me I needed to be more like him. He made a mistake, Sarah shrieked, shielding Caleb with her body. He's a sensitive boy. He needed help. We couldn't let him get hurt. So you stole from me to save him? I yelled. You stole my future to pay for his gambling? It's all family money, Robert roared, losing control. It's my father's money. It should have been mine. He skipped me. He skipped his own son to give it to a grandchild. It wasn't fair. I took what was rightfully mine. It wasn't yours, Robert, Thomas said. his voice dropping to a whisper that was louder than a scream. Isaiah knew. He knew who you were. He knew you would squander it on cars and vanity. That's why he left it to Joshua. Because Joshua has integrity. Thomas paused, looking down at the red Porsche hood he was using as a desk. He ran a finger along the sleek metal curve. Speaking of cars, Thomas said. A small, grim smile played on his lips. Let's talk about this beautiful machine. The Porsche 911 GT3. Robert stiffened. He moved instinctively to block the car, standing in front of the emblem. Leave the car out of this. That's my personal property. It has nothing to do with the trust. On the contrary, Mr. Thomas said, pulling out the final document. It was a bank transfer receipt, stapled to a dealership invoice. It has everything to do with it. This is the final withdrawal, Thomas announced to the crowd, holding the paper up. Dated 7 days ago. Amount, $152,000. Memo, liquidation. He looked at Robert. You emptied the account, Robert. You took the last pennies left in Joshua's trust fund. And you wired it directly to Midtown Porsche of Beverly Hills. The crowd gasped. The audacity of it was stunning. You bought a Porsche with my college fund? I asked, my voice trembling with rage. You showed up to my graduation in a car bought with money Grandpa left for me? I needed a car, Robert shouted, his eyes bulging. I have an image to maintain. I'm a consultant. No one hires a consultant who drives a 5-year-old BMW. It was an investment. For the family. No, Thomas said sharply. It was theft. Grand larceny, to be precise. Thomas walked around Robert and placed his hand on the roof of the car. And here is the interesting part about trust law, Robert. When funds from a trust are used to purchase an asset directly, and that asset can be traced, the asset becomes the property of the trust. Thomas turned to me. Joshua, come here. I walked over, my legs feeling like lead. This car, Thomas said, patting the red metal. This car was paid for in full with your money. Every single bolt. Every stitch of leather. Legally, this car does not belong to Robert Miller. Thomas looked Robert dead in the eye. This car belongs to Joshua. You're lying. Robert lunged for the door handle. It's registered in my name. With stolen funds, Thomas countered. Which makes the title voidable. I've already filed an emergency injunction this morning. The title is frozen. He looked at me. It's your car, Joshua. I looked at the Porsche, the symbol of everything my father valued, status, speed, superficial beauty. He had chosen this metal object over his own son's education, over his son's well-being. And now it was mine. And there is one more thing, Thomas said, reaching for the paper I had crumpled in my hand earlier. The invoice. May I? He asked. I handed him the invoice for services rendered. Thomas smoothed it out on the hood of the Porsche. He read it, shaking his head. You handed this to him, Thomas said to Robert. You itemized the costs of raising a child and demanded repayment. You demanded interest. So what? Robert spat. It's a contract. He hasn't signed it yet. It's not just a contract, Thomas said. It's evidence. See, proving intent in embezzlement cases can be tricky. You could have argued that you simply borrowed the trust money and intended to pay it back. That it was just bad bookkeeping. Thomas held up the invoice for everyone to see. But this proves you never intended to pay it back. In fact, it proves you believe Joshua owed you. It proves a systematic, predatory intent to strip him of his assets and then enslave him with debt. This piece of paper, Thomas smiled coldly, is the nail in your coffin. It turns a civil dispute into a criminal fraud case. Criminal, Sarah whispered. The color drained from her face completely. She dropped her purse. Bob? What is he talking about? Dean Andrew? Thomas nodded to the dean. Dean Andrew pulled out his phone. They're waiting at the gate. Who is waiting? Caleb asked, looking around wildly. Hunter, cut the feed. Cut the feed. No way, Hunter muttered, stepping back. This is getting millions of views. I invited some guests, Dean Andrew said. Since you like itemized lists so much, Robert, I thought you might like to see the itemized list of charges the district attorney has prepared. Siren lights flashed at the entrance of the parking lot. Not the campus security yellow lights, but the red and blue of the city police. 2 cruisers rolled up silently. They didn't use the sirens, just the lights. It made it more ominous. 4 officers stepped out. Leading them was Officer Nicholas, a man I recognized from the town. He looked tired but determined. Robert Miller? Sarah Miller? Officer Nicholas asked, walking up to our little group. This is a mistake, Robert shouted, backing up against the Porsche. You can't arrest me. I'm a respectable businessman. This is a misunderstanding. My lawyer will. Save it for the station, Bob, Officer Nicholas said, pulling out a pair of handcuffs. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of wire fraud, embezzlement of a federally protected trust, and grand larceny. Sarah, Robert yelled. Call the attorney. Call Goldman. But Sarah wasn't calling anyone. She was staring at the handcuffs. Then, she looked at me. Her eyes filled with tears, instant practice tears. She threw herself at me. I stepped back, but she grabbed my arm. Joshua, she wailed. Joshua, baby, please, tell them we're good parents. We loved you. We made mistakes. We did it for the family. Don't let them take your mother away. I looked down at her. I saw the fear in her eyes, yes, but I also saw the calculation. She was still trying to use me. She was still trying to spend me like currency. Joshua, she begged, shaking my arm. We raised you. You owe us. I gently reached down and peeled her fingers off my arm, one by one. Her grip was tight, desperate. You're right, Mom, I said softly. You did raise me. Yes, yes, she nodded frantically. And you gave me a bill for it? I said, pointing to the invoice lying on the hood of the Porsche. You put a price tag on being my mother, and you stole the money Grandpa left me to pay for your own vanity. She stammered. You ruined this family, Robert shouted as the officer cuffed his hands behind his back. He was struggling, his face purple with rage. You ungrateful brat. I gave you life. You ruined us. I looked my father in the eye. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of him. He looked small. He looked pathetic. No, Dad, I said, my voice steady and loud enough for everyone to hear. I didn't ruin the family. I picked up the invoice and held it up. I just audited it. The crowd erupted. It was a mix of gasps and cheers. Hunter yelled, "Oh my God!" behind the camera. Officer Nicholas took Sarah by the arm. "Ma'am, turn around." "No. Caleb, do something." Sarah screamed as the cuffs clicked onto her wrists. Caleb stood there, frozen. He looked at his parents being led away to the police cars. Then he looked at me. Then he looked at the Porsche. "Josh," Caleb said, his voice small. "Josh, if they go to jail, who's going to pay for my apartment? Who's going to pay my credit card?" I looked at my brother, the boy who had never worked a day in his life. "I don't know, Caleb," I said, picking up the keys to the Porsche from the grass where I had dropped them earlier. "But I hear the warehouse is hiring for the night shift. You should apply. It builds character." I turned to Mr. Thomas. "Thank you for everything." "Don't thank me yet," Thomas said, closing his briefcase. "We have a lot of paperwork to do. We have to liquidate their assets to recover the rest of your trust. It's going to be a process. Scorched earth, we call it." "I'm ready," I said. I looked at the Porsche. "My Porsche. Can I drive it?" I asked. Thomas smiled. "It's your car, kid. Get in." I opened the door. The smell of fresh leather hit me. It smelled like money. But more than that, it smelled like justice. I sat in the driver's seat. I looked out the window at the police cars driving away with my parents. I looked at Caleb standing alone in the parking lot, looking lost. I started the engine. It roared to life, a deep, guttural growl that shook my chest. I put it in gear and drove out of the parking lot, leaving the Invoice and my old life in the dust. Driving that Porsche 911 GT3 out of the university parking lot felt like piloting a spaceship. The engine roared behind my head, a mechanical symphony that vibrated through the carbon fiber seat and straight into my spine. I gripped the Alcantara steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. I wasn't driving for joy, I was driving to escape. I watched the rearview mirror until the flashing lights of the police cruisers and the stunned face of my brother Caleb disappeared around the bend. I didn't go back to my dorm. I didn't go to the graduation afterparty where my classmates were currently toasting to their futures. I drove to the one place where I felt safe. I drove to the cemetery on the outskirts of town, to Grandpa Isaiah's grave. I parked the bright red sports car, a symbol of my father's greed and now, ironically, my liberation, under the shade of an old oak tree. I sat there for a long time, the engine ticking as it cooled, listening to the silence. For the first time in 25 years, the noise in my head had stopped. The constant anxiety, the fear of missing a rent payment, the crushing weight of my parents' expectations. It was all gone, replaced by a strange, hollow calm. My phone buzzed. It was Mr. Thomas. Joshua. His voice was crisp and professional. I'm at the precinct. The arraignment is set for tomorrow morning. I need you to come to my office first thing. We have to initiate the civil recovery process immediately. We call it scorched earth for a reason. We have to move faster than they can hide assets. I'll be there, I said. The next few weeks were a blur of legal pads, forensic accountants, and boxes of documents. I learned that the betrayal went far deeper than just the stolen college fund. Mr. Thomas and his team of forensic accountants peeled back the layers of my parents' finances like a rotten onion. We sat in a conference room with a view of the city skyline. Mr. Thomas slid a thick binder across the mahogany table. It wasn't just the trust fund, Joshua, Thomas said, tapping the cover. Robert and Sarah have been using your identity for years. I opened the binder. My stomach dropped. There were credit cards in my name opened when I was 18. There were utility bills for rental properties I didn't know existed, all listed under Joshua Miller. They tanked your credit score before you even graduated high school, Thomas explained, his face grim. That's why you got rejected for that low-interest student loan sophomore year. It wasn't because of a lack of history. It was because you were already carrying $50,000 in debt you didn't know about. I felt a cold fury rising in my chest. They told me I was irresponsible. They lectured me about fiscal responsibility while they were using my social security number to buy timeshares. Exactly, Thomas said. But this works in our favor. This isn't just a civil dispute anymore. This is identity theft. It strengthens our case for full asset seizure. We are going to take everything, Joshua. The house, the vacation home in Aspen, the remaining cars, the jewelry. Everything bought with the proceeds of crime. Do it, I said, staring at the numbers. Burn it all down. The day the authorities seized the house was the day I finally felt closure. I drove the Porsche up the long, winding driveway of the estate I had grown up in. It was a massive, sterile mansion that had never felt like a home. It was a showroom for my mother's vanity. Movers hired by the state were already there, carrying out furniture. I watched as two men hauled out the oversized velvet sofa my mother didn't let anyone sit on. Another team was carrying out my father's golf clubs, custom-made, gold-plated shafts. I walked through the open front door. The house echoed. It smelled of expensive perfume and decay. I walked up the stairs to my old room. It was barely a closet compared to the master suite. The walls were still bare. I had never been allowed to put up posters because they ruined the aesthetic. I stood in the center of the room, remembering the nights I lay awake there, hungry because I had been sent to bed without dinner for forgetting to polish the silverware. I remembered studying by flashlight under the covers, so my dad wouldn't yell at me for wasting electricity. Mr. Miller? I turned. A deputy sheriff was standing in the doorway, holding a clipboard. We're clearing the master bedroom safe. Mr. Thomas said you should see this. I followed him down the hall to my parents' room. The safe was open. Inside, stacked in neat piles, were cash and jewelry. But that wasn't what the deputy was pointing at. It was a stack of letters. Unopened. I picked them up. They were addressed to me. Joshua Miller. The return address was from the architecture program in Italy, the one I had desperately wanted to attend during my junior year. I tore one open. Dear Mr. Miller, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted into the Florence Design Intensive with a full scholarship. My hands shook. A full scholarship. My parents had told me I was rejected. They had intercepted the mail. They had hidden the acceptance letter because they didn't want to lose their live-in servant. Or maybe because they couldn't stand the idea of me succeeding on my own terms without their help. I crushed the letter in my fist. They stole the money, yes, but they also stole the experiences. They stole the life I could have had. Take it all, I told the deputy, my voice trembling. Sell every damn thing in this house. I don't want a single souvenir. I walked out of that house and didn't look back. 2 days later, the rain started. It was a torrential downpour that turned the city streets into rivers. I was at my new apartment, a modest, clean place I had rented with the advance from my new job. I was sitting on the floor, unpacking books, when there was a frantic pounding on the door. I knew who it was before I opened it. I unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door open. Caleb stood there. He was soaked to the bone. His designer jacket was ruined, stained with mud. His hair was plastered to his forehead. He looked like a drowned rat. "Josh!" he gasped, shivering. "Josh, you gotta let me in." I didn't move from the doorway. "What do you want, Caleb?" "I have nowhere to go," he stammered, wiping water from his eyes. "The landlord kicked me out of my apartment. Dad's credit cards are frozen. Mom's accounts are locked. I tried to use the ATM and it ate my card. That tends to happen when the money is stolen," I said calmly. "You have to help me," Caleb pleaded, his voice rising in panic. "I haven't eaten since yesterday. I slept in my car last night, but they towed it this morning. They towed my car, Josh." "The car that was bought with my tuition money?" I asked. "Sounds like justice to me." "Stop being a jerk," Caleb snapped, a flash of his old arrogance surfacing. "This is all your fault. If you hadn't made a scene at graduation, none of this would be happening. Dad would have figured it out. We would have been fine." I laughed. It was a harsh, bitter sound. "My fault? Caleb, you're 21 years old. You haven't been in school for 2 years. You've been living off the money meant for my education while I scrubbed dishes until 2 a.m. And you think this is my fault?" "I'm your brother," Caleb yelled. "You can't just leave me on the street. Family helps family. Family doesn't steal from family," I countered. "Family doesn't lie to cover up grand larceny. You knew, Caleb. You knew about the money. You knew I was suffering while you were partying, and you didn't say a word." Caleb looked down at his muddy shoes. He didn't deny it. "I need $5,000, Caleb muttered. "Just give me $5,000. I can get a place, get back on my feet." "I'm not giving you a dime," I said. Caleb's head snapped up, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What? You have the Porsche. You have the settlement coming. You're rich now." "I'm not rich," I said. "I'm recovering what was stolen. And I'm not your ATM, Caleb. I'm not Mom and Dad." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a $20 bill. I held it out to him. "Here," I said. Caleb stared at the bill like it was an insult. $20? What am I supposed to do with that?" "Buy a hot meal," I said. "And then buy a newspaper. Look at the classified ads. I hear the warehouse is hiring. It's hard work lifting boxes, but it pays honest money. It's time you learned what that feels like." "I'm not working in a warehouse," Caleb spat. "I'm a Miller. The Miller name doesn't mean anything anymore, Caleb," I said softly. "It's just a name on a police blotter. You have a chance to be someone else, someone better, but you have to do it yourself." I tucked the bill into his wet jacket pocket. Goodbye, Caleb. Josh, wait. Please. I closed the door. I locked the deadbolt. I listened to him pounding on the wood for 5 minutes, screaming insults, then crying, then begging. Eventually, the pounding stopped. I heard his footsteps retreating down the hallway. I slid down against the door and sat on the floor. It was the hardest thing I had ever done. Every instinct in me wanted to save him, to fix it, because that's what I had been trained to do my whole life. But I knew that giving him money would only enable the same sickness that destroyed our parents. He had to hit rock bottom. He had to build his own foundation. I walked over to the box Mr. Thomas had given me earlier that day. It contained the few personal items of Grandpa Isaiah that hadn't been sold off. On top was a sealed letter. I sat on my couch and opened it. The handwriting was shaky, written in the final weeks of his life. My dearest Joshua, if you are reading this, I am gone, and the truth has likely come out in a painful way. I am sorry I could not be there to shield you. I knew your father was weak. I knew he looked at money not as a tool but as a scorecard. That is why I tried to protect your future with the trust. I watched you grow up, Joshua. I saw how they treated you. I saw you sharing your toys while Caleb hoarded his. I saw you working in the garden while they sat in the shade. You have a builder's heart. You understand that things of value take time and effort. Do not let their greed poison your soul. Anger is a useful fuel, but it is a terrible building material. Use the anger to tear down the old structure, yes. But when you build your life, build it with love, with integrity, and with kindness. No one can invoice you for a foundation you laid yourself. Build something beautiful, Mason. Make the name Miller mean something again. Love, Grandpa Isaiah. I cried then. For the first time since graduation, I let myself weep. I wasn't crying for the loss of my parents or the money. I was crying because someone had seen me. Someone had known the truth all along. I wasn't a bad investment. I was a builder. 3 years later, I stood on the roof of the newly completed Isaiah Miller Community Center. The late afternoon sun cast long, golden shadows across the sleek glass and reclaimed wood of the structure. It was my design, my first solo project as a lead architect. It wasn't a skyscraper or a luxury hotel. It was a space for at-risk youth, a place with a library, a computer lab, and a music studio. A place where kids who felt like they didn't belong could find a foothold. I had used a significant portion of the recovered assets from the scorched earth liquidation to fund the construction. It turned out well, Joshua. I turned to see Dean Andrew standing behind me. He had retired from the university last year, but he still had that commanding presence. It's beautiful, Andrew said, running a hand along the railing. Your grandfather would have loved this. He always said architecture was about shaping how people feel, not just where they sleep. I hope so, I said, taking a deep breath of the cool autumn air. It feels solid. How are things? Andrew asked, leaning against the parapet. With the family? I looked out over the city. Quiet. Dad is still serving his sentence. 4 years for fraud. He sends me letters sometimes, asking for money for the commissary. I don't answer. Mom got out on parole last month. Have you seen her? Once, I said, from a distance. She's working at a cosmetics counter at the mall. She looked older, tired. She saw me, I think, but she turned away. I think the shame was finally stronger than the vanity. And Caleb? I smiled, a genuine small smile. Caleb surprised me. He didn't take the warehouse job, but he did get a job at a landscaping crew. I saw him a few weeks ago. He was sunburnt, calloused, and driving a beat-up truck. He didn't ask me for money. He just nodded at me. I think he's finally growing up. Adversity introduces a man to himself, Andrew quoted. He reached into his jacket pocket. Speaking of introductions, Thomas wanted me to give you this. He found it in the final box of legal files from the archives. It was misfiled under medical records from 1999. He handed me a small, faded photograph. It was a Polaroid. I took it. The image was grainy, but clear enough. It showed my grandfather, Isaiah, looking 20 years younger, holding a baby, me. But standing next to him wasn't Sarah. It was a woman I didn't recognize. She had dark, curly hair and eyes that looked exactly like mine. She was laughing, looking at the baby with a look of pure, unadulterated love. I flipped the photo over. In Grandpa's handwriting, it read, Isaiah and baby Joshua with M. Reynolds. June 1999. M. Reynolds. I asked, looking up at Andrew. Who is she? Andrew sighed, a look of deep sympathy on his face. Thomas did some digging. Meredith Reynolds. She was a brilliant art student. She dated your father briefly before he met Sarah. When she got pregnant, Robert didn't want the inconvenience. Sarah came into the picture, wealthy, social climbing. They made a deal. My heart hammered against my ribs. A deal. Meredith died in a car accident shortly after you were born, Joshua, Andrew said softly. It was tragic. Robert took you in, not out of love, but because your grandfather threatened to cut him off if he didn't. Sarah agreed to raise you, but she always resented you. You were the living proof of a life Robert had before her. That's why she was so cruel. That's why you were always the outsider. I looked at the woman in the photo again. My mother. My real mother. The pieces finally clicked into place. The emotional distance, the constant criticism, the feeling that I was an intruder in my own home. It wasn't just that they were bad parents. It was that I was a reminder of a woman Robert had loved, or at least a woman who wasn't Sarah. Meredith, I whispered the name, felt warm on my tongue. She was an artist, Andrew said. She painted. She sculpted. You get your creativity from her, Joshua. Not them. I felt a tear slide down my cheek, but it wasn't a tear of sadness. It was a tear of relief. The final chain had broken. I wasn't the son of greed and vanity. I was the son of art and resilience. Thank you, I said to Andrew, for everything. You did the work, son. Andrew patted my shoulder. I just opened the door. He walked away, leaving me alone on the roof. I held the photo up to the sunset. The woman, Meredith, seemed to be smiling at me through the decades. I had spent my whole life trying to pay back a debt I didn't know, trying to buy the love of people who were incapable of giving it. I had let them invoice me for my existence, but that account was closed now. I put the photo in my pocket right next to my heart. I turned and looked at the city spread out before me. I had a building to open. I had a life to design. And for the first time, the blueprint was entirely my own. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my story, it is this: you do not owe your parents for your existence. We live in a world that puts family on a pedestal, often at the expense of our own mental health and survival. We are taught that gratitude means submission and that love means allowing yourself to be used. But true parenting is a gift, not a loan. A parent's job is to launch you into the world, not to anchor you down with their own failures and greed. If you are in a situation where love feels like a transaction, or where your value is measured by what you can provide to those who are supposed to provide for you, walk away. It will be the hardest thing you ever do. You will feel guilty. You will feel alone. But you cannot build a life on a foundation that is crumbling beneath you. You have to pour your own concrete. You have to design your own future. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt invoiced by your family, emotionally or financially? Have you ever had to cut ties to save yourself? Or simply, what does the word family really mean to you? Drop a comment below with your story, or if you don't know what to say, just type good. By typing good, you're letting me know that you believe Joshua made the right choice, and your interaction helps this video reach other people who might be trapped in the same darkness I was. Let them know they aren't alone. I'll be reading the comments. Thank you for listening, and remember, build something beautiful.